So I am thrilled to welcome Ben Jenkins, the co-founder of Sympler, which is in the qualitative research space, and Shannon McKenzie, the director of creative products at NBC Universal. Prior to co-founding Sympler, Ben was an ethnographer and brand strategist at Dogar 5, Ogilvy, and BBH, where he worked on brands ranging from Johnny Walker to Axe deodorant to Google. Shannon is an Emmy award-winning producer who holds multiple technical patents and is a former professional athlete. As part of NBCU's content distribution group, she leads UX research, UX design, and product strategy. Join me in welcoming them to the stage.
Our problem started maybe 200 years ago with the Industrial Revolution, which is when people started thinking about efficiency as the main job that we were working on. In that time, we've actually become the robots. So all of the chat about the robots that are about to take over and the fight that is about to ensue, the bigger problem is that perhaps the fact that, everyone sitting here has kind of robotized themselves. We've been trained to follow systems and in the aim of a greater master, which is efficiency. You see it in the language. So language that talks about user testing, language that talks about consumer. I'm probably going to say consumer. I will probably say respondent instead of participant. We don't talk about humans. And this is no way of talking about our fellow humans. We're essentially turning them into robots, and they in turn are speaking to us in much more robotized ways. One of the things that we probably have heard a lot is the machines, AI, technology think differently. Even that language anthropomorphizes machines. They think differently from humans. We have a very clear way of using emotions, for instance. We not only store memories and ideas and thoughts in our emotions, but we also retrieve them by leveraging our emotions. Whereas machines are much more about predictive, they're about pattern recognition. They're not actually feeling and hearing and understanding. They're just repeating and categorizing. Very, very different. I mean, even before you get to left brain and right brain. So what we're about is how do you access, thank you, Ray, how do you access those emotions? Humans actually know how to access those emotions. They do it through a sense of play. Which is what, right now, many of us are not in a sense of play. Even I'm not in a state of play. So the job for AI is to actually put us into the conditions by which we will then be able to, access those human qualities. Things like reading between the lines, things like accessing meaning. What did you actually mean by that? Things like listening for the thing that wasn't said, that we know humans would normally say. This is what humans are innately good at, because the best readers of humans are other humans. At the very center of what we do is AI, as everybody will say. But we're pointing it in two different places from everybody else. Yes, we get to the efficiency thing. Yes, we talk to a lot more people. Yes, we go much faster, especially for qual research. But we're pointing it in two directions at the same time. And both those directions are in service of humans, not just in service of efficiency, in case you haven't picked that up already. So in one direction, an AI is behaving essentially like a moderator. So I don't even go further than a moderator, more like a therapist. They're kind of going, talk to me about this. I don't want to know what you think. I want to know what you feel. I want to know your secrets. I want to understand why you feel like that. I want to draw out through things, yes, play and creativity and lateral thinking and projection and reflection, things that we don't spend much time doing. I want to draw out really what the truth of this, what is the motivating factor under all of this. And because we do this in an environment that is about personal, intimate conversations with your nearest and dearest, so chat messaging, we're talking in DMs in Instagram, Facebook Messenger, Snapchat. In these environments, your searches aren't typically there. You're not normally talking to strangers there. You're talking to your close people. So in that environment, this therapy-like moderator can really get deep and have a decent conversation. And in the other direction, the AI essentially is a coach. And as a coach, they can remind us to do what we are supposed to be doing as humans when it comes to designing creative ways of asking questions, when it comes to interpreting what the meaning of it is. Little probes. You'll hear a lot about prompting. We need to learn how to prompt better with the bots. But how about they prompt us how to human better, which is kind of what's going on here. Like, why didn't you think about this in a different way? Why didn't you play a game? Why don't you put yourself in their shoes and imagine how it'd feel if you were asked that question? And so by doing that, you put the participant as well as the practitioner into a state of much greater communication.
We'll jump into some of the insights. Aaron gave a great introduction, and thank you for that, because it was very sweet. And you heard I'm a former athlete, so I'm all about play. But I actually have a confession to make. When we first started working with Ben and his team at Sympler about 5 years ago, I would say, I was more interested in the toy of AI and trying to understand how to use the technology than I was in the actual research that we're fielding. And that's because of what I do at NBC Universal. I'm with the product team in content distribution. And essentially what we do is look at innovation strategies, but also to figure out how we tell stories on screens of all different sizes. And so that's a huge platform today. And so we started with a very, very simple premise, which is, what does it mean today when you say, I'm going to watch TV? And we kind of had the hypothesis, known already that watching TV is very different today than it was 50 years ago, when the television was a piece of mid-century modern furniture sitting in the middle of the living room and everyone gathered around to marvel at this, mastery of technology, new stories being piped into the home, right? And so ultimately what we're trying to do is just ask people, how has it changed for you? And starting to understand, hey, we know you can get content on any device, anytime, in the backseat of your car, on the airplane. But what does it actually mean? And what does that experience look like today? Now, we did this very classically. If you're a fan of design, which I am, because I spent a lot of time doing design and design history and design research, we just broke it down very structurally in terms of methodology into 3 buckets. That was just starting with production. What is the device like? What's the place of it? The consumption, and the mediation. So we'll talk about the insights of those 3. So to start with, the television was originally a communal device in the home. And so today, in an individualized world where everything is personalized, you got everything on your phone, what does that actually mean today? And does the TV even still have a place in the living room? And it turns out it does. The responses were really unique. When you look at a television as a communal device and you see it today, what it's actually doing is creating a sense of communal feeling as a substitute when there isn't one available. People very frequently commented that they sat down to eat a meal and turned on the TV just to have some companionship. They would leave the TV on as they were multitasking and working, or when they were home with the flu, because just the ambient light and sound allowed them to feel more comfy in their space, and it kind of filled up the room. Somewhere out there today, in fact, there's a golden retriever right now watching a golf channel because someone commented that, their pet has anxiety and they leave the TV on to reduce the anxiety. So again, where we have a communal device coming into the home originally in the 1950s and 60s, now when we're living in these very isolated worlds and we have a sense of differentiation between us, we use these mediums as a technology to kind of create that communal feeling where there isn't one, or when we can't have one. From the consumption side, very high intent to consume. People love stories, and what we really saw was the emotion coming out and a somatic experience. And this is something I was really interested in because we haven't heard this or seen this before. Again, people are videoing themselves watching TV. They're sending us GIFs and memes. They're doing all these things to try to describe this. And so you can see some of the language here, and I love these. I hated him when he showed up, but I was in tears when he died. The writers of the show are doing things right when they make you love a hated character. That is so much nuance in understanding what someone's actually feeling about the content. And same, when the perpetrator was attacked on Law & Order SVU, I was screaming at the TV for them to hit the asshole again, right? I felt the heat coming from my chest. That's someone describing their somatic experience. And so that's a depth of insight as a designer that's really unique for me because I don't typically get that type of information. Last but not least, really looking at navigation, and that's the sort of the interface itself, and asking people, well, what does it mean to be part of the navigation now? And is navigation part of your narrative? And with sports fans particularly, and of course, if you can imagine the sports fan, right? The jersey, the face paint, the tailgating, the pub, all of that. There's a really high sense of belonging and wanting to be part of that sort of tribe. And so with that go rites of passage. Sports is a closed system. You have to know the rules. You have to understand the athletes and the players. And so you also have to understand how to navigate to that content. And in a world today where content discovery is very complex, this is something that's a rite of passage, and people actually articulate that they're taking pride. There's anticipation and then satisfaction when finding the game or match I want to watch. So when I start to look at this type of language and these sorts of insights from a design perspective, what I'm essentially doing is saying, hey, we've got this huge canvas now that we have to design for, but we also have a much richer palette of information that makes all of the language and the design language that we translated into much more colorful. So these are the types of things. It was a bit of a metaphor for me to start with a toy and play with it, and then it turns out that's actually the insight, right? And so that was the learning curve with this as well. And it also helps us, as Ben mentioned, to kind of free us up to do our craft.
I suppose our conclusion is that every so often a new technology comes along. And when it does, humans have this tendency to sort of get very kind of humble. They deify and iconize and worship this new technology. And they start to fear. I mean, this one feels like it actually will. Start to fear what it's going to do. And in the process, we do two things. One is that we forget what we bring. Like in every good team, you need to recognize and play to each other's strengths. And I think we're in danger at this moment to forget who we are, what we bring, and how as a team, we could do great things. Every new technology has new rituals, new languages. And we're going, right, now we need to learn how to prompt these machines, otherwise we won't get the most out of them. But what we're trying to do is kind of flipping that, which is, what about getting the most out of us? So the job we want to leave you with is, let's learn how to give the prompts to the machines to probe us into becoming humans again. And as humans, we will understand humans a lot better in the future.